welcome, whether you're here in the church, just a few of you today, joining us on Zoom, or even watching the recording at a later time. You're welcome whoever you are and however you are feeling, whatever you carry in your heart and bring with you, hopes, cares, concerns, or celebration, sadness or joys, you're all welcome. And especially if there's anybody on Zoom or watching later, if you're joining us for the first time. However we join in, each one of us is part of our community, contributing by being in spirit, be connected in spirit, and all equally valued. And we'll begin, as is our custom, by lighting our chalice as a symbol of our free religious faith. And if you are at home and have a candle, you may like to light it now. Some words for today's chalice lighting, they're by the Reverend Stephanie Bisbee, a Unitarian minister in this country. For the light of days remembered, which has brought us to this place, and the light of love and justice for the wider human race, for the light which burns and blazes to inspire us to do our best, and the light which in its fading calls us to our nightly rest. As a beacon lit in memory of all those who came before, and a light of hope for those who yet will enter through our door. As a symbol of our values, and to mark our common aim, as we gather here in worship, we have lit our chalice flame. My service today, as you will have seen, is called May Musings. And as it unfolds, you will see that this May, there is much on which to muse, including special days and anniversaries. And so it seemed appropriate to introduce it with this piece by Dr. Andrew Usher, and he is also a Unitarian minister. And he writes, as we gather in this springtime of marbles and piracies, hopscotch and jump rope, we look forward to the coming summer, the lengthening of the days, and the warmth of promise. But we remember also the winter just gone, and the seeming barrenness of the sleeping earth. And we think too of the seasons and faces of the past, people and places that have touched our lives, whether through friendship and support, or simply because the knowledge of their existence is in itself an encouragement. And in remembering those whose dedication has shaped our lives, we are aware too of the wider influence we have. We as individuals and as community touch the lives of those around us through our own initiatives and through the wider causes which we support. May our interactions amongst ourselves and with others be infused with the increasing light, so that those we meet may likewise take joy in this puddled, wonderful world. To the sweet, spontaneous earth, for all its riches and wonders, we breathe our thanks. Grateful too for the knowledge that, whatever happens, spring is still with us. And may its joyous message of awakening lighten our hearts and enliven our steps throughout the coming season. A wonderful welcome to those of you who have made it through the puddle of wonderful world. And I invite you to join in singing our first hymn, number 43 in the Purple Book, Gather the Spirit. Well sung, all of you. We come to our story. I think we are all aware that the 80th anniversary of the end of the war in Europe, known as VE Day, was marked by millions of people in hundreds of different events this past week. Many people shared their personal memories or those of family members. There were many memories of the day in Plymouth, of course, and the Herald reported how one of Plymouth's last surviving World War II veterans had unveiled a memorial to the fallen in a ceremony on the 80th anniversary of VE Day. It tells us that Ivor Foster, who is now 99, was a mid-upper gunner in a Lancaster bomber and served at the tail end of World War II in the RAF. He was invited to Plymstock Bowling Club, where he was a member and a former treasurer, to unveil a wall-mounted statue of a soldier known as a Tommy. And this is going to be illuminated at night. Ivor gave a moving speech to the members saying, "Thank you for giving me the honour of unveiling a memorial to those brave men and women who fell in wars gone by. It is only right that Tommy's statue is there to keep those memories alive forever. And it is my honour and grateful duty to unveil the club's own Tommy." He told the Herald that he was still serving when VE Day in 1945 was announced, and so he wasn't caught up in the wider celebrations. He said, "We were all really confined to camp, with no flying in or out, so we just wandered around. To be honest, I never used to drink on those days. They had a celebration in the evening, but the only thing as far as we're concerned was that there was no flying that day." But he somberly reflected, saying that the loss of comrades in the war meant it was not a great cause for his personal celebration. He said, "It doesn't mean that much to me now, as I had 6 of the best mates in the world that I flew with. There were 7 of us in the Lancaster," he continued, "and they're all gone now. I was the baby of the group, and our engineer was the grandfather. He was 44, flying with boys who were 18 or 19. So I'm the last one left. But as my pilot would say, that's how the cookie crumbles." And I'm sure the most senior members of our congregation have their own personal memories of those days. Let us turn to a time of prayer and reflection. Our first prayer is by the Reverend Mark Hutchinson, who used to be a minister for the Cotswold group. I'm not quite sure where he is now. And this is entitled Remembrance and Peace. Thank you, and may there be peace. I desperately want to remember everyone who fought and died. I desperately want to understand all those who fought on the side and those who wouldn't fight, and the destruction of planet and animals from everywhere, and everywhere that thought it was right. But there are too many. It is simply too much to take. So for all of these many, may we try to never repeat the mistake that war offers solutions to the way we are together. We are the solution to the way we are together. Thank you, each person and everything that allows this moment. And may there be peace in each moment to come. Amen. And a prayer just entitled Peace. There is no mention of who wrote this prayer. Spirit of love and life, guide the efforts of mankind to bring peace and justice to the nations of the earth, and to give strength to rulers and all who work to establish peace and justice in the world. Prosper the activities of those who work to preserve human rights, to promote the endeavours of all who work for reconciliation and justice. Deliver us from the forces of malice, jealousy, and fear. Direct us into the ways of understanding, cooperation, and mutual respect. Bless all peacemakers. Sustain all peacekeepers. Break down all barriers of ignorance, suspicion, and fear. Build up those things that make for peace, justice, and freedom. Enable us to live with dignity as brothers and sisters united in our diversity and our desire for a world where war itself is but an event, only dimly remembered. Amen. I invite you now to join in singing our second hymn, which is the hymn number 178 in our purple book. Together now we join as well. As I mentioned earlier, May has many dates, and for the Americans, the last Monday in May is their Memorial Day. And this little poem combines May with that. It's a poem by somebody called Annette Wynne. She's an American poet, but very little is known about her life, except that she wrote poems mainly for children and had 2 books of poetry published in the years following the First World War. Some US states had been observing Memorial Day since the end of the Civil War. But after the 2 world wars, it became a national day of remembrance for all members of the US military who fought and died in service. And this little poem is called May Has Decked the World. May has decked the world, that we may bring the brave on land or sea, earth's glory on Memorial Day, the lovely meadow gifts of May. Brave dead who saved our country, we come with flowers. O living brave on land or sea, we wave the bright red, white and blue, and bring May meadow gifts for you. The second is by Cliff Reed, and if you know me, you know that I usually manage to find something suitable of Cliff's to include in my service. And this is called Salvation. It's from his book, The Carnival of Lamps, and we actually have it here in our church library. I've just returned it this morning, Linda. It's on the desk in the vestry. So Cliff starts with a quotation from the Acts of the Apostles, 16 verse 10. What must I do to be saved? I can see some of you cringing, but bear with me. He continues, what does it mean to be saved, in inverted commas? To be saved in soul and spirit. Is it about holding the right beliefs, observing the right rituals, saying the right prayers, venerating the right saints? Is it booking a place in paradise, stepping by grace from off some predestined walkway to hell? Or is it being true to the best you know, regardless of the consequences? Living in honesty and authenticity, being as kind, compassionate and loving as we can, even when we don't really much feel like it. Could it be that to be saved is to live free from hatred, vengefulness and resentment, free from hypocrisy and self-righteousness, free from selfishness, jealousy and greed, to take no thought for the morrow, because God's kingdom is here now, and we are called to enter it today as living souls in living bodies, not free from mortality, but free from its dread. To be saved is to live abundantly, following as best we can in the footsteps of the great souls, blessed with courage to take hard roads. So a lot to think about in that little reading. We have candles here today, candles of joy and peace, and anyone, whether here or our friends on Zoom, may come up and light a candle. Say a few words if you wish, or if you wish to, light it silently. And after that, there will be some silence for your own personal prayer and reflection, and then some music. So I invite anybody who wishes to light a candle, and Lisa, if anyone on Zoom would like to. So, as I've said, today's service is called May Musings, and during its unfolding, you will have already seen that this May there is a lot upon which to muse, including the special days and anniversaries. That 80th anniversary of VE Day, of course, still very fresh in all our minds. And for our most senior members, this includes their own personal living memories. But going much further back in time, this May sees the 1700th anniversary of something, also very significant. The opening gathering of the First Council of Nicaea in May 325 AD. And then there are also ancient and modern celebrations for the start of the summer, with the month bookended with early and late spring bank holidays. Any May month is one of much promise, with new growth, warm sunny days, and the beginning of the time of the great abundance of summer. But as we've noticed, the breeze can still have a chill to it, and a reminder to be aware of the threat of late night frosts, with their potential to damage the darling buds of May, as all you gardeners and allotment holders surely know only too well. Along with the rejoicing comes the need for vigilance to cherish and protect the tender new growth of our dearest hopes, for peace, and as has been mentioned, for freedom of thought and belief for all people, everywhere. So I've read a bit about that first earlier event, which opened in May 325 and had a huge effect on the whole Christian church for many centuries. The First Council of Nicaea could be regarded as the first ecumenical council of the Christian church, and it met in ancient Nicaea, now Iznik, in Turkey, and it had been planned to hold it somewhere else, but Constantine, Emperor Constantine, who decided it ought to happen, it was nearer to where he lived, and so it was held in one of the big palaces, and apparently the treasury paid for all the expenses. How wonderful. Christianity had only recently been legalized in the Roman Empire. I'm sure we've all heard the tales of the people being thrown to the lions, and that bone that was discovered recently in a site, an archaeological dig, where they found the bone with sadly, somebody's hip with lion's teeth marks on it. So the persecution hadn't long ended. Well, as I said, Emperor Constantine called the council. He presided over the opening session and took part in the discussions. It involved at least 200 bishops and many supporting staff. And at this time, Constantine was still preparing for his own baptism. This Council of Nicaea was the first of many efforts to reach consensus in the church over various issues, including setting the date of Easter, and the most important one concerning the divine nature of God the Son and his relationship to God the Father. The main people involved were the Archbishop Alexander of Alexandria and the presbyter, somebody called Arius. Alexander and many of the other bishops believed that God the Son was eternally generated from the Father, while Arius and his followers asserted that the Father alone was eternal and the Son was created or begotten by the Father and therefore was not eternal and subordinate in some way to the Father. Arius's point of view was rejected and the Nicene Creed was drawn up, still adhered to by mainstream Christians after 1700 years. I think it's been modified a bit, but basically all those years. Anyone rejecting the creed at the time, including Arius and several bishops, were excommunicated and exiled on the orders of the emperor. Arius's writings were confiscated and burnt, so I suppose he got off fairly lightly. And his supporters were regarded as enemies of Christianity. Constantine ordered the death penalty for anyone who refused to hand over Arius's writings. But despite this, the controversy continued in various parts of the Roman Empire for several more centuries. Although Arius's beliefs were not identical to those of modern-day Unitarians, it did set me thinking and wondering how differently the Christian church might have developed if what became the mainstream churches and Arius had been able to coexist. It's one of history's great what-ifs. We shall never know. In later centuries, various versions of Arius's ideas resurfaced in Central Europe and later reached our own shores. People died defending their beliefs when they differed from the official views of the time. It is so important to this day to ensure that we keep our right to a free religious faith, free from having any creed or dogma imposed upon us, as has been said just a few minutes ago. I'm going to mention one other thing before I come to talking about VE Day again, and that's something called Rogation Sunday. I might do a whole service on this sometime because it's quite interesting. This takes place on the 5th Sunday after Easter Sunday, and it's an ancient church festival which originated about 200 years after the Council of Nicaea. It started in a part of France by the Bishop of Vienne and eventually adopted in other places. What it was that the word rogation comes from the Latin word rogare, meaning to ask, and it reflects a beseeching of God for protection for calamities and to especially protect the crops. And in those days, maybe more than now, people were very dependent upon their local crops doing well. And so it's been passed down through the centuries. Some parts in this country, they have what they call beating the bounds, which is associated with it. So watch this space. You might hear about this next year. But coming again to VE Day 80 years on, it came after a series of surrenders by Germany. The first came on April the 29th, just outside Naples, when the British Field Marshal Alexander accepted the surrender of the German and Italian forces in Italy and Western Europe. And then 5 days later, Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery accepted the surrender of German forces in northeastern Germany, Denmark and the Netherlands. And finally, an unconditional surrender of all the Nazi forces in Europe, signed at Reims and then again in Berlin. For many people in this country, after nearly 6 years of war, it must have been a bittersweet moment, a time for reflection as well as celebration, as we heard in our reading about Ivor from Plymstock Bowling Club. And while many people lit bonfires and threw back the blackout curtains and had street parties, others thought about what they had lost. And the world also had to reckon with the Holocaust after the advancing armies uncovered the horrors of the concentration camps. Dan Ellen, a historian at the University of Lincoln, says, "It must have been a huge letting off of steam and a massive relief for so many people. But for thousands of people, the victory was tinged with a sadness because for them, their loved ones were not going to come home, or not yet. Because VE Day wasn't actually the end of the World War elsewhere. The Japanese were still fighting ferociously, and many Allied soldiers expected that they would have to go over there as soon as the war in Europe had ended. Most were spared another fight
when Japan surrendered in August after the United States dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A horror which I heartily pray never ever happens again. I found some thoughts by veterans on their own reflections on VE Day. There's a lady called Dorothea Barron, who is now 100, and she was a signer in the Wrens. She remembers the sense of camaraderie as everyone banded together to defeat the common enemy. She said, well, naturally it's something worth celebrating because we had finally stopped the Germans from trying to get into England. We were absolutely determined they weren't going to set foot in our country. And Mervyn Kirsch, who was also 100, said that VE Day should be a reminder to today's leaders that they must stand up to bullies and despots wherever they may be. You can't have peace without strength, he said. It's no good just remembering. You have to do something. For many of us, myself included, the memories can only be second-hand. Some years ago, when I asked my father, who was with the American forces as they made their way into Germany, how he had celebrated VE Day, I was rather surprised when he said he couldn't remember any celebrations. They were too busy pressing on with what they had to do. He helped with repatriation work for months afterwards. My late partner John was in the jungles of Burma, so for him the war was still very much ongoing. He never went into much detail. I think that generation didn't. But he did say that a few days before the atom bombs were dropped, although he didn't know that was going to happen, his unit was told to go on a few days' leave and to jolly well enjoy it, because it might be their last. And like the many thousands of others, they were spared that final fight when Japan surrendered in the August, as I've just mentioned. And the thought of any more atom bombs being dropped anywhere is a horror which I sincerely hope and pray will never happen. From what I've read and heard, the generation who lived through that war pulled together to survive and overcome a dreadful tyranny, so that we, their children, grandchildren, and future generations can enjoy the freedom to discuss the rights and wrongs of warfare and other important concerns, such as how best to care for our environment and for all the species with which we share this precious planet. We cannot afford to be complacent, for in too many countries war and conflict still exist, and even again in parts of Europe. We must protect our freedom of belief, conscience and speech, which is why it was so important to honour that generation with the recent commemorations. In a speech just a few days ago on their anniversary day, King Charles acknowledged not only those who served in uniform, but those who remained at home during the war. He said, "We unite to celebrate and remember with an unwavering and heartfelt gratitude the service and sacrifice of that wartime generation." He recalled the original VE Day speeches. We should remind ourselves of the words of our wartime leader, Sir Winston Churchill, who said, "Meeting jaw to jaw is better than war." The King called upon us to rededicate ourselves not only to the cause of freedom, but to renewing global commitments to restoring a just peace where there is war, to diplomacy and to the prevention of conflict. And he quoted his grandfather's plea for a lasting peace, founded on justice and established in goodwill, a result of unity between nations, races, religions and ideologies, fighting back against an existential threat to humanity. Their collective endeavour remains a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when countries stand together in the face of tyranny. And so, amidst all those celebrations 80 years on, it was appropriate to pause, as Jill had mentioned, and to reflect in silence for a few moments. Now, May the 8th also happened to be the day of the furry dances in Helston. The secretary of the Helston Flora Dance Association, Nick Wills, said, "This moment of reflection is held in honour of the sacrifice made by those Helstonians, countrymen and women, who gave their lives in the service of their country during the Second World War." And he invited all attending the Flora Day to join in the silence, which they duly did. I listened to the radio clip and was very moved by it, but unfortunately I was not able to download it for you to hear. But our closing video is a short recording of one of the dances. But before we enjoy that, it's time for our final hymn, the hymn number 44, Give Thanks for Life. A few closing words. I'm reading the Millennial Prayer because I think it's as relevant now as it ever was 25 years ago. Let there be respect for the earth, peace for its people, love in our lives, delight in the good, forgiveness for past wrong, and from now on, a new start. Amen.